Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on February 6, 2022 at approximately 8:50 p.m. PST. I've been doing a lot of gaming lately, as in Dungeons and Dragons, and something kind of came to mind that a young lass made a point of a few years back. Where it comes to gaming, now gaming itself is designed as a hobby, as a pastime, as a way to get away from the real world. But in my case, one thing that was pointed out is I use gaming itself, that creation of another world, in order to test out theories of creativity, theories of reality modification, if you will. Now, understanding that the root access as far as changing your life is built straight into the imagination. Okay, now it's sort of a question of the chicken or the egg. Okay, does my information come from my imagination? Does it come from past life memories? Does it come from experience? In all fairness, it comes from all of it. Now, I've had a number of different psychologists, psychiatrists I've talked to over the years have all confirmed the same thing. My mind is working perfectly fine, but it does work on a different wavelength. Okay, now I'm not talking about the scientific side of wavelengths, but the way that I come to conclusions is a very different fashion. Okay, now I'm not going to try and go into the shall we say the detailed side of it, but suffice it to say, if you start looking at the way your life is in the way of pros and cons, okay, then it's easier to identify which way things are going. Now, like I said, this society itself is turning. It is changing for the better, and that is in large part due to you. Okay, as individuals, we all have the same responsibility to alter the energy flow in our own life in order to make it run more effectively for us. The side effect of this is it will make it easier when the energy in your own home is running smoothly. It will make it easier for you to operate in the physical world with other people. Okay. Now, I came back to this life. I returned to this life at this time for one primary purpose: to pass on a simple message that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually all people. Okay, and I'm not talking just humans. I'm talking humans, other species, plants, animals, elementals, all of it. Now, the imagination is a wonderful thing. And like many people have asked me, because of the fact that I work with not only people, but with other races as well. Okay, many people have asked me how I can manage to do it. Well, because I see all people the same way. They are all, every one of you is as valuable as the next person, not necessarily monetarily. Now, I made a very serious mistake a while ago. Okay, where I actually took a few people and made the mistake of looking at it and going, they're doing so much better than I am. It wasn't until it dawned on me that they really weren't. Then I realized that, when it finally got put through to me that no, they weren't in any better shape than I was. Certainly, they may have had more money, but they were spending money just as fast. It seems to be a question where the material world is concerned. It seems to be a question that people have the same tendency, regardless of their income level, regardless of their walk of life. You've got a certain amount of income coming in, and you spend slightly more than what is coming in. Always striving for that extra thing, always comparing yourself to somebody else. I shouldn't say always. Always is one of those words that doesn't work. I should say most of the time. Now, some of you are better at controlling it than others. Okay, well, when that dawned on me, I took a real serious look in the mirror and went, okay, why am I seeing them as being in better shape? And in all fairness, it turns out I wasn't looking at the fact they were doing better. I was looking at the fact that I wasn't doing as well as I could be doing. Okay. And you may be suffering the same thing. Especially when we look at the fact, when you take a look at the way the world is taught, children are born very free spirited, very accepting, very interactive, and quite often very animated. As children go, on the whole, they have a very vivid imagination, but as they get older, when you're just tiny, parents seem to go, "Oh, that's a cute imagination, and let's let them be kids." Well, I'm telling you, you're all still, no matter what your age, no matter what you've been through, you're still all children. Okay. If you don't believe me, ask yourself one question: do you have a mother and or a father? Okay. Now, in the case of humans and most corporeal forms, there is a male, especially if they're corporeal and they are dual gender. Most of them have, well, they all do. If they're dual gender and they're corporeal or not corporeal, you have parents. Whether you were born of a physical nature, whether you were born in an egg, whether you were born in a test tube, it doesn't matter. You're still a child. And I will tell you, accessing that imagination and letting it grow as it will is extremely important, because it's through that imagination that we start pushing the limits and start bettering the lives of ourselves and those around us. Now, if you're going down the road and you're following a spiritual guide, of which, by the way, I do classify myself as one. Okay, I do classify myself as a spiritual guide. I always have. Even when I started working in the field that people call metaphysics, that they refer to as psychic, I have always billed myself as a spiritual guide. I don't make decisions for people. I simply point out the likely outcomes of the path you're on. And I've been very neglectful in pointing out in spotting the likely outcomes of the path I'm on. Okay, so what I've started doing, and I started this quite a while ago, but what's starting to surface really nicely is my understanding in my own world as to what has to be changed. And of course, this neat little, and I don't think I've got it there right now. Let me just see here. Nope, I don't have it there, and it's not there, so that's okay. Usually I have a list right by hand so I can write things down when they come to mind, even while I'm on the recording. And do understand, this is a live recording, meaning the tools that I offer here are the tools I personally use, and they are the philosophies of life that I personally live by. There's only 3 laws that I deal with. Okay, but compare these 3 laws to whatever laws you're following. Okay, and I do believe you'll find they all fit inside these 3. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. Okay, compare the philosophies and the guidelines and the laws that you're living by, and I do believe you'll find they'll all fit in there. Now, what I'm seeing with the world is people are starting to get the right message. They're starting to realize whether I'm directly responsible or whether somebody else is really of little consequence to me. Okay, what does matter is the fact that we are looking at a situation where people are starting to realize that we really can make this a better world. There's a lot more effort going into it. You take a look at it. I'm talking about the world. Now, I've heard some pretty horrendous things, both positive, some pretty horrendous things about the convoy, and some pretty miraculous things. But we have to understand, in every group of people, there will be dissidents. Okay, because not everybody is built the same way. And like I said, this whole path of working with each other to make this a better world is going to take time, and some people are not going to be happy with it. Some people are going to be absolutely terrified of the concept of bringing the world together. Primarily, this seems to be a question. I mean, it's definitely fear based, but it primarily seems to be a question of what people think world unity is. Now, when we're talking about world unity, we are not talking about one person sitting at the top of the totem pole and going, this is how we operate. We are talking about one group of people, as in this case, we'll settle for just simply humans. Okay. Now, I will tell you, when I'm talking humans, I am referring to purebloods, as in your straight human. There are many of you out there, many, and some of you may not realize it, much like adopted people, adopted kids don't always know they're adopted. Some of you may be hybrids of one race or another. Okay. Some hybrids show up really nicely, but they do mimic the situations of other people and of other things. Okay, one obvious one is there's a product out there, and I believe it's called silver oxide. Okay, that when you take it for an extended period, turns your skin blue. Now, the reason I bring this up is because a Pleiadian hybrid will also have bluish colored skin. But the big difference is not in the visual context. It's that when you look at their pigmentation, when you actually push on their hand, like if you shake their hand and watch the pigmentation on a hybrid will move. Okay, if the pigmentation doesn't move, you're dealing with somebody with either silver oxide in their system or something else that I'm not aware of. With a Pleiadian hybrid, the pigmentation actually alters. Some of them have learned to alter the pigmentation by simple thought. Now understand, humans do learn how to control heartbeat, how to control their breathing, how to control their pain threshold and healing rate. Pleiadian hybrids have learned how to modify their pigmentation to alter the way it looks. Okay, sorry, if you're wondering what that pausing was, it's because I was hearing something thumping out front. Okay, and I wasn't able to identify entirely what it was, but it did get my attention. Okay, Pleiadian hybrids are the obvious one from my standpoint. Now, when you're looking at a gray hybrid, okay, one of the biggest things that is noticeable, aside from the appearance, aside from the feel of it, which for me, that's exactly how I tell when I'm dealing with a hybrid or when I'm dealing with somebody that is just cut and dried human stock. Okay, I go by the feel of it. Of course, I've grown up empathic, and I've learned to trust that feeling much better than any logic available. Now, the neat part about it, in my eyes, is that we can take a look at this, and we can look at the way humans are. If your child behaves a little differently, oh, there's something wrong with it. I remember one child. I shouldn't say it. That's really kind of rude, but him or her or an hermaphrodite, which are all natural human evolutions. But I remember a child years ago. I actually went to a house party years ago, and there was a little kid that everybody was concerned with. The parents, the doctors, the psychologists, they were all worried because his child was 5 years old and had never uttered a single word. Okay. Now, this made the adults get very edgy. The child, aside from that, was extremely well adjusted. Okay. Now, it became obvious at this dinner party because I'm sitting there and we're all interacting. And when I was growing up, we had a meal that we used to call goulash, which really boiled down to whatever was in the fridge, whatever leftovers were in the fridge that were still good, went into the same pot. Okay, usually with some sort of either cream of mushroom soup or maybe with a tomato soup. But it all went into one pot. We called it goulash. Well, At this particular dinner party, the family decided that was what they were having for dinner. And as near as I could figure, they'd never done it before. But they put this meal on the table, and they put a bowl in front of this little munchkin that he had never uttered two words, right? He never uttered one word. And they put this bowl on the table in front of him. And he sits there and he looks at the bowl, and all of a sudden he looks at his dad and he goes, "What is this garbage?" Right? Well, it brought the entire table to a dead standstill. And of course, the mother looks at him and goes, "You spoke." The kid goes, "Of course I spoke." Right? "But you've never said another word before." "No, but I didn't have anything to say before." "What is this garbage?" Well, we worked through it all, but as it turned out, the whole issue around the kid's speech had nothing to do with education, had nothing to do with the problem. It had to do with the fact he just flat out didn't want to say anything. So he didn't. Okay, he never said a word until he was 5 years old. I have no idea what's happened to him at this point. But what I'm getting at is that just because a child is behaving in a fashion that is not run of the mill does not mean there's something wrong. Okay. I myself was diagnosed mentally retarded when I was 2 months old. When I was 2 years old, sorry. I took a fever of 108.4 that flash fried the hypothalamus and the hippocampus. And the doctors came to the conclusion that because my brain did not work right, and they couldn't get a gauge on it, that meant I was mentally retarded. I could go into the medical side of it, but the reality of it is, well, I'm pretty certain they were wrong, considering when I hit grade 8, they threw me into a course in theoretical genetics. And I ended up graduating on the honor roll out of high school. But just because somebody thinks differently doesn't make them mentally incompetent. Sometimes it does. Do not get me wrong on that. Sometimes it really does do that. But when it comes to a child's way of looking at the world, understand they're figuring it out for themselves in the first place as well. So going back to the issue of your gray hybrids, there may be something a little different that looks a little strange compared to the average person. Their eyes may be a little bigger, they may be a little more rounded, the face may be a little smoother. Same as if you're looking at a half elf. Okay, as in the elephant race, which is still existent today. The hybrid elephant is likely to have slightly pointed ears. Now, do understand, slightly pointed ears or oval eyes or slightly larger round eyes on their own do not mean you're dealing with a hybrid. Okay, it really boils down to the feeling of it. Now, what I've found with a lot of the religions is they take a look at a slight discrepancy and all of a sudden you've got a problem. Left-handed children used to be considered marked by the devil. Okay, and when they were going through school, an archaic method of dealing with it was smack the left hand every time you tried to use it to write. Now, I know some people that actually grew up in that environment. I was lucky I didn't. Okay, I grew up in the environment, I just never had to deal with it because I didn't know about my left-handed tendency, which is something I am still working on putting back together. But making changes to the way your life is going to require concerted effort. Now, as you can see, I've managed to get it to the point where I can actually pick up my coffee cup. Okay, there was a period, for the last couple of years, it's been a royal pain trying to grab hold of that because after my stroke, the left hand didn't work right. Changing the way your life is going to take effort. It's going to take time. And I strongly recommend putting your ideas on paper in small doses, 15-minute to half an hour jobs, in order to be able to watch them grow. Okay, but it's going to be you that's going to have to do the work. All the success in the world, in your life, is going to boil down to your efforts. And pointing the finger at other people for whatever reason or some other group of people for whatever reason, okay, as being responsible for the way your life is getting away from the reality. Your own choices, your own path in life is your decision. Yes, it is absolutely influenced by other people. Okay. And the spiritual guides on this planet have done an absolutely appalling job in keeping people on track, in my opinion, because they keep talking about fearing everything around you, the creator itself. Okay. It's a very confusing message when you say God loves everybody, but fear him because he will kill you. He will wipe you out if you don't do what he says. That is not a sign of love. Okay. A sign of love, like with your children, telling them I love you, and when they do something wrong, absolutely discipline them. Okay. I've seen it done multiple times. I had it done to me. Discipline does not mean abuse. Okay. But when a child makes a mistake, when an employee makes a mistake, okay, and does something that is just absolutely stupid, okay, and rest assured, I've made my fair share of mistakes. Some of them absolutely horrendous. But I was fortunate enough to do so with the right people in place. Okay, with the right parents, with the right bosses that understood that what I had done was absolutely ridiculous. It was completely stupid. But instead of them shooting me for it or beating the heck out of me metaphorically or physically, okay, instead of doing that, they helped me see what I had done and I turned things back around. Now I'm looking at the same situation in my own life. I know where I've made miscalculations. The beginning of last year, my parents' estate cleared, and I ended up with 3 years of income in my bank account all in one shot. What I didn't get was the message that it was my thinking around finances that really screwed things up. I finally got that sorted around, and I'm very happy to say that things are changing. Like, I am actually putting the money where it belongs now, which is absolutely critical. Okay, now tomorrow I've got to go through, because I've got all these books on the go, and I've got a number of them in print right now, and unfortunately did not keep proper track of the income that I made and how it came in. I do have an inventory count. And by doing that, I can figure out what my expenses were last year or what my income was last year. Because I do know how many books came in, and I know how many I've got left. By extrapolation, I'll be able to figure out what my financial income was. Which, rest assured, was not as good as my financial outlay. But then, when I look at that, I've got a number of books in print. Okay, and even because of the fact, as I mentioned, with the Yldrbac Chronicles, it is set up and does involve, it's, as I put it in the book, it's a science fiction, science fantasy book written by a gamer with gamers in mind. To this end, I've got a very limited number, as in, I think I might have a dozen. That's part of the inventory thing. But I have custom made dice boxes and complete with gaming dice. Okay, that I do actually have in stock, and I will be as soon as I get all of the stuff moving in the right direction. It too will be put into my Yldrbacian webpage on Facebook. There we go. Pull the blank on Facebook, and you'll be able to see what these are, complete with the price. They are custom made, individually made by an extremely talented woodworker. Now, the dice, granted, we ordered. Okay, but the boxes themselves are custom made. Okay, they, as well as the various books that we've got, are going to be, that is what we're starting to work on now. Because I didn't do the marketing right. And frankly, my problem there is I'm not great at the marketing side. So, from my understanding, it really boils down to a case of becoming visible with it. But I think part of the holdup has been the same thing that caused me so much trouble getting behind getting behind the camera. Or in front of the camera, I don't know. I think it's both in this case. I never wanted to be in the spotlight. And, well, it seems to be that's what's happening. Now, I still haven't evolved very far. Like, the number of followers I have here is nothing to write incredibly spectacular stories about. When I look at my subscription, at the subscribers on my tube, on my site, right now, I'm just about to break the 200 mark. Okay, I've got 194 followers, which to me is absolutely incredible. Okay, but this is going to be a slow process. It's very much like changing the tide of society. Society has spent thousands of years digging itself into the hole that we're in today. And it's going to require the assistance of all of you to help turn this around. And yes, with that in mind, I am absolutely asking for your help to join me on this endeavor to turn society back around, to let people understand, to help people understand that working together we can make this a better world for most people. But it's going to take the individual work. And it starts by looking here. Look in your own heart. Okay, take a look in your own heart. Are you content with the way your life is going? Now, I've had a number of things happen that I can actually look at and go, I'm really happy with. My weight drop, my subsequent understanding of the way I've been thinking about things, especially the material world. Okay, the fact that I am getting more comfortable with the idea of stepping in front of the camera and going, this is the message, this is what we have to do. And that funny little sign up here, that wood one there, that's hand carved. I will be burning it a little more deeply this year. Once it warms up again, I'm not going out there while it's got ice all over the place. But, and that would make sense. We are going to pause that for a second. My apologies. I do believe I just said something that I really shouldn't have. Okay. When I said I pray to, I do my best not to do what many people consider swearing. Okay, especially if I'm not in if I'm angry, that's a whole different issue. But to those of you that caught it, or if I did say it, because I don't honestly know, my sincere apologies. Okay, I'm not going to go back and edit it. Like I said, I do make mistakes. I do stumble on things, but changing society is going to require all of us, and it's going to take time. Okay, but it is a doable thing. Now, I completely botched the tail end of that. That ringing was somebody trying to contact me. It threw me completely off track. With that in mind, I will leave you tonight. I will be back again tomorrow at some time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.